ask. Even if you listen, you do not really hear or see or feel. You don't remember my story. You haven't walked my path. You haven't seen what I've seen.
As resilient as she is, it's heartbreaking to watch, I know, but let's put our emotions aside just for one moment and imagine another scene at the same house. There's a police car parked outside with the sirens blazing. The father has been taken away by the police. The mother is incapacitated. The little boy is crying on the living room floor, and you are the social worker that has to go into that house and make an assessment of the situation of Maya. In fact, let's do that together now using something called the Adverse Childhood Experience, or ACE for short, scoring system. Are you ready? Okay. From what you saw in the clip, did you notice that Maya suffered from physical violence? Did you feel that she was humiliated? Did you think that she was unloved and uncared for? Did you think that she was neglected? Did she see her mother experience violence? Did you see alcohol or drug abuse? Okay. Other ACE questions would relate to child sex abuse, mental health, criminality in the household, or other issues. We didn't see those in the clip, but from what we could see that Maya has an ACE score of 6.
Okay, so now I will talk a little bit about why adverse childhood experiences are important. Exposure to adverse childhood experiences is a risk factor for 7 out of 10 of the major causes of death in the United States and Canada. Adverse childhood experiences can have persistent negative effect on health as well as life opportunities such as education and job potential. Adverse childhood experiences can increase the risk of injury, sexually transmitted infections, and maternal and child health problems, including teen pregnancy, pregnancy complications, and even fetal death. Involvement in sex trafficking and a wide range of chronic diseases and leading causes of death, such as cancer, heart disease, and suicide. Adverse childhood experiences and associated social determinants of health, such as living in under-resourced or socially segregated neighborhoods, frequently moving, and experiencing food insecurity, can cause toxic stress or extended or prolonged stress. Toxic stress from adverse childhood experiences can change brain development and affect such things as attention, decision-making, learning, and response to stress. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about how common are ACEs. ACEs or adverse childhood experiences are fairly common. According to the original adverse childhood experiences study, 67% of the population have at least one adverse childhood experience, and 12.6% or 1 in 8 had 4 or more adverse childhood experiences. In Canada, according to the National Population Health Survey that was conducted in 2013, 19.4% of adults reported parental addiction in childhood, and 18.5% experienced childhood physical abuse. In Alberta, almost 27.2% of adults experience abuse, and 49.1% experience family dysfunction, according to a study conducted by Sheila McDonald and her team in 2015. So now there is a growing evidence of the ways in which adverse childhood experiences can cause these poor outcomes. Those people who have experienced high ACEs are at significantly increased risk of health risk behaviors and mental illnesses, as well as chronic diseases such as cancer, heart disease, and obesity, and stroke. Children growing up with toxic stress may have difficulty forming healthy and stable relationships. They may also have unstable work histories as adults and struggle with finances, jobs, and depression throughout life. These effects can also be passed on to their children. Some children may face further exposure to toxic stress from historical and ongoing traumas due to systemic racism or the impacts of poverty resulting from limited educational and economic opportunities. So now here is the mechanism linking or demonstrating how the adverse childhood experiences get under the skin and affect the developing brains and bodies of children, and then health outcomes in adulthood. In high doses, ACEs affect the brain system, the hormonal system, and the immune system, and even influence our DNA in the way it is read and transcribed. Persistent stress can cause biochemical changes in the brain. For example, adverse childhood experiences can cause the pleasure, or can affect the pleasure and reward center of the brain due to substance abuse. Adverse childhood experiences can also inhibit prefrontal cortex, which is necessary for executive function and is a critical area for learning. Adverse childhood experiences can also make changes in amygdala that affects the fear response system. That is why people with high adverse childhood experiences or high ACEs are more likely to have cognitive deficits, and they are more likely to be involved in high-risk behaviors. But even then, the people who do not engage in high-risk behaviors, they're still at high risk of developing ischemic heart disease and cancer, which are the leading causes of death in the United States and Canada. The reason behind this is the fact that the adverse childhood experiences or ACEs can affect the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis that controls our fight or flight response. This disadvantage is transmitted from parents to children through multiple pathways, and these early experiences can affect adult health through cumulative social and economic change or damage over time and through the biological embedding of adversities during sensitive developmental periods. Now, childhood is a particularly salient stage of development, and thus adverse childhood experiences during childhood, of course, have the potential to influence developmental pathways and shape the character and content of life. So now here is a questionnaire called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Questionnaire that is commonly administered to measure adverse childhood experiences. The questionnaire is a 10-item self-report, valid, and reliable measure that examines adverse childhood experiences from birth to 18 years of age. The items assess 5 aspects of child maltreatment, including physical, verbal, and sexual abuse, and physical or emotional neglect. An additional 5 items assess family factors, including domestic violence, marital dissolution, parental addiction, and mental illness or incarceration. Responses are scored as 0, which is equal to no, and 1, which is equal to yes, with the total scores ranging from 0 to 10, with higher scores indicating a greater accumulation of the adverse childhood experiences. So now, people with high doses of adverse childhood experiences, like 4 or more, have triple the risk of lung disease and are more likely to be smokers. They have 11 times increased risk of intravenous drug abuse, 14 times increased risk of suicidal attempts, and other mental health disorders such as depression. People with very high doses of ACEs or adverse childhood experiences are more likely to have short life expectancy by up to 20 years. The adverse childhood experiences pyramid, which is shown here, is actually a model that describes the relationship between adverse childhood experiences, disease, and potentially an early death. There is a growing evidence of the ways in which adversity and toxic stress cause these poor outcomes. And again, those people who have experienced high adverse childhood experiences are at significantly increased risk of chronic diseases such as cancer, heart disease, as well as mental illnesses and health risk behaviors. Now the question is, why do we want to just give so much attention to these statistics? Health disparities occur in every society. All we need to do is refer those marginalized families to social services or mental health services, and that should be it. However, we need to rethink it, as adverse childhood experiences are way more common than we think. We need to evolve our training and intervention to address trauma, to be trauma-informed, because if we know and understand the mechanism or pathways of the disease, it is our job as healthcare providers and researchers and knowledge users and even collaborators to prevent and treat adverse childhood experiences. Now, we can prevent adverse childhood experiences by educating and training parents, and by implementing early interventions, and by creating stable, nurturing relationships and environments for all children and families to prevent adverse childhood experiences so that all children can reach their full potential. We need to understand and address the factors that put our children at risk or protect them from violence. We can prevent it by building resiliency in families, for example, by nurturing their parenting skill, to address dysfunctional parenting and helping people to understand the impact of trauma and heal from their experiences. As Dr. Vincent Felitti, who is the original, who was involved in the original ACEs study, described it, our current social problems are so complex, we must invest in primary prevention programs. So now here is the strategy map to mitigate the effects of adverse childhood experiences. I know this is huge. And so you can see there are multiple areas where intervention needs to be done at different stages of life, from early childhood to adulthood. We will not go into much detail here, but I will focus on our team's work and the area of intervention in the next few slides. One objective of this strategy map focuses on conducting early assessments of the risk of an infant being in the traumatic environment before the trauma occurs, and then intervening in multiple ways to minimize the effect or mitigate the negative influences of the early childhood experiences or that early childhood environment. It is important to identify potential adverse childhood experiences before they happen so that we can prevent them and they can be reduced as much as possible. So before I talk about it more, I will show you a video about the toxic stress and how it derails healthy development in children. It is from the Center of the Developing Child at the Harvard University. Okay.
Learning to deal with stress is an important part of healthy development. When experiencing stress, the stress response system is activated. The body and brain go on alert. There's an adrenaline rush, increased heart rate, and an increase in stress hormone levels. When the stress is relieved after a short time, or a young child receives support from caring adults, the stress response winds down and the body quickly returns to normal. In severe situations, such as ongoing abuse and neglect, where there is no caring adult to act as a buffer against the stress response stays activated. Even when there is no apparent physical harm, the extended absence of response from adults can activate the stress response system. Constant activation of the stress response overloads developing systems, with serious lifelong consequences for the child. This is known as toxic stress. Over time, this results in a stress response system set permanently on high alert. In the areas of the brain dedicated to learning and reasoning, the neural connections that comprise brain architecture are weaker and fewer in number. Science shows that the prolonged activation of stress hormones in early childhood can actually reduce neural connections in these important areas of the brain at just the time when they should be growing new ones. Toxic stress can be avoided if we ensure that the environments in which children grow and develop are nurturing, stable, and engaging.
Okay, so now I will talk a little bit about our team's work to mitigate the impact of toxic stress or adverse childhood experiences. So our work is heavily focused on intervening in the early years. The reason that early experiences are so important for the baby's brain is because the child's brain develops faster at this stage than any other period of their life. Additionally, the early development will set course for any future development. The first 5 years of life are the magical years for intervention. The changes that we can facilitate in this period can last for the rest of the child's life and of the parent's life. So the goal of our work is to prevent childhood trauma before it happens, rather than only doing screenings a few years after the trauma happened to try to identify those who had experienced trauma. It now seems obvious that screening to identify opportunities to prevent childhood trauma is such a wise thing to do. So if we are building much of our logic around brain science and brain development, it now seems obvious that interventions and prevention strategies should be in full force during the first 5 years of life, and when so much of the brain development happens. So from this perspective, screening kids in elementary school seems so late, yet most strategies seem to be based on the thinking that screening in elementary schools is great because that is considered early. So our team, which is supervised by Dr. Nicole Returno, develops and tests parenting intervention for early childhood for high-risk families. One of the parenting intervention that Dr. Nicole Returno and Dr. Martha Hart created is called attach intervention that we all familiar about, and it's an acronym for attachment and child health. So now I'm just going to go back to this strategy map so that I can highlight the areas that our team is focusing on. So from this strategy map, we are really focusing on intervening in early life, enhancing early brain development in infants and toddlers, improving maternal child health care. improving maternal and child health services for high-risk families, expanding support and programs for healthy, positive families, minimizing exposure to adverse childhood experiences trauma, improving the positive experience in early years, and improving mental health and social support for parents. So now the question is, why do we want to improve early detection and proactive strategies? And the answer is to reduce early childhood trauma in high-risk families. And the answer, the next question is, how do we want to or how are we going to reduce early childhood trauma in high-risk families? And the answer is by improving early detection and proactive strategies. To answer these questions, we just wanted to show you a video focusing on why does early intervention matter. So there's another video here.
Too many children face the kind of challenges or disadvantages that can affect their development and threaten their future well-being, health and happiness. And failing to intervene at an early stage can lead to a range of negative consequences in the future. For example, there's a link between behavioural problems in childhood and lower qualifications and earnings later in life. Poor social and emotional skills as a child are linked to academic struggles, poor mental health and relationship problems as an adult. These problems are likely to be more serious, more damaging and more difficult to address once a person reaches adolescence or adulthood. But these outcomes are not set in stone. Experiencing challenges or disadvantages early in life doesn't have to dictate a child's well-being and opportunities as they grow up. Early intervention can support 4 important aspects of children's development: physical, cognitive, behavioural, and social and emotional. Short-term improvements in these 4 areas can lead to benefits throughout childhood and later life, including improved physical health, improved mental health and well-being, better academic results and job prospects, improved behaviour, and a reduced risk of criminal involvement. Leaving problems unresolved in childhood doesn't only impact on the lives of individuals and families, but on all of us as a society as well. Effective early intervention can help to reduce the amount of support a person needs during their lifetime and relieve the pressure on our vital public services. Over time, it can help to build communities that are more resilient and more supportive places for children and young people to grow up. Preventing problems from arising in the first place or working to reduce their impact on people's lives is good for all of us.
Okay, so yeah, so again, there are more details about our work, and I will talk about the attached intervention in more detail now. Attached parenting program is developed in collaboration with multiple community organizations. There are 10 sessions for the caregivers and co-parents. The program is focused on improving parent-child attachment, parental reflective functioning, immune health, and child development. This is targeted on the highest risk families struggling with poverty, domestic violence, mental health problems, and adverse childhood experiences score of 4+. So yeah, so we have analyzed our data, and most of the, this is what we have found, that the ACEs scores is 4+ for those families. We have already conducted 7 pilot studies in Calgary at CUPS Calgary, Discovery House, and Sunshine Community Services, and the results have been published. So now this is the first paper that we published, which is entitled Effect of the Attachment and Child Health Parenting Parent Training Program on Parent-Child Interaction Quality and Child Development. And I will present the results just in the next slides. And so another paper that we published is entitled Attachment and Child Health Pilot Trials, Effect of the Parental Reflective Function Intervention for Families Affected by Toxic Stress. And it explores the effectiveness of the attached intervention for at-risk mothers and children less than 36 months of age on maternal child attachment and reflective functioning. Also, we have developed and published a fidelity checklist for the attached program. And so we have recently published a paper that looks at the effect of the attached program on immune cell gene expression profiles in mothers and children. As you know, children exposed to adversity and toxic stress are at increased risk for poor health, most likely through alterations to immune pathways. and parenting intervention could buffer the effect of adversity on child immune activity. So we therefore tested whether mothers and children had healthier post-intervention outcomes on immune cell gene expression patterns. So now here are the results actually. So the results from these pilot studies indicated that there were significant differences in the parent-child relationship quality scores, parental reflective functioning scores, and some areas of child development, including cognition, child cognition, and motor development, favoring the intervention group. And we found medium to large effect sizes. We also found that the ATTACH program predicted healthier immune cell gene expression in children and mothers. And so its ATTACH program could protect the health of families escaping domestic violence. So now I just wanted to give some highlights about my postdoctoral work, which is co-supervised by Dr. Nicole DeTurno and Dr. Kara Ross. We previously reported findings from the first 3 ATTACH pilot studies, and now for my postdoctoral work, I'm reporting the findings from the 5 pilot studies, including randomized controlled trials and quasi-experimental studies, in an additional sample of 40 caregivers caring for a child less than 6 years of age. The aims of these trials, in addition to replicating the first 3 trials in a larger sample, were to measure intervention impact on child attachment, evaluate intervention effect on parental reflective function, and explore the potential effect of intervention on parental depression scores. So what we found is, compared to the control group, ATTACH trained caregivers demonstrated greater likelihood of secure attachment with their children and higher capacity for parental reflective function in randomized controlled trials. Significant improvements in parental reflective function scores were also observed in the quasi-experimental design with the ATTACH, within the ATTACH group analysis. Also, because the attachment security improved or increased, ATTACH training also appeared to serve as a protective factor for depressed caregivers. And the comparison between intervention and control families with respect to parental depression just missed significance. So the p-values that we are reporting here are 0.060. Although the ATTACH intervention is not primarily designed to improve parental depression, the trends that we found are really encouraging and really promising. So our results demonstrated the promise of the ATTACH intervention for high-risk caregivers and their young children. So now the next step is in our research program, which is currently underway, involves training staff members at the partner agencies to deliver the ATTACH intervention with fidelity and testing whether ATTACH intervention's efficacy holds when delivered by staff members in the community-based agencies. We are hopeful that training community staff members in this ATTACH therapy or the ATTACH intervention and child development and effective parenting strategies will help them just to reduce the gap between knowledge creation and knowledge implementation of this community intervention. So far, our experience shows us that the community staff members welcome the additional training and are very well poised to provide this additional support to the parents experiencing toxic stress. So now to summarize, we are advancing the science of implementation or implementation science to reduce early childhood trauma. So now I will give some additional information or a snapshot of some other important work related to my postdoctoral training, which is related to implementation science and how we can advance the science of implementation to reduce early childhood trauma. So now, just to put the things in context on implementation science, I want all of us to recall a line from a movie. So there was a movie back in 1989 called Field of Dreams, and I hope someone would remember. There's a line from that movie: if you build it, they will come. But the challenge is they may not. We have too many innovations that are developed, and there is not necessarily that big uptake of those. So if we don't figure out the knowledge base that supports the use of effective interventions or innovations, that potentially inhibits the use of things that are not effective at all. The same applies to the use of screening tools. Okay, so now here is the definition of implementation science, or what we actually mean by implementation science. So the implementation science is the scientific study of methods to promote the systemic uptake of research findings and other evidence-based practices into routine practice, and hence to improve the quality and effectiveness of health services. So now thinking about the implementation science or implementation science related to trauma, informed practice, there are several challenges that we face when implementing the research into practice as to how do we move into practice. The challenges are, to name a few, include understanding the needs and priorities of the stakeholders, for example, the partner agencies, the administrators, the attached facilitators, and the children and the families. Another challenge is related to constraints of the real-world logistics that influence how we train, and then we hope to get the implementation fidelity, having it done the way the researchers have been doing it, and how to maintain sustainability or scale or spread over time. Also, we need to take the outcomes measure into consideration, choosing the appropriate outcome measures, and are they sensitive to different phases of implementation contexts and different stakeholders. Now, the questions that comes to mind, would I design my program differently from the start as I want to reduce the research to implementation gap? So in the same context, if we think about measurement development and evaluation, there are significant gaps related to measurement issues that are among the most critical barriers to advancing implementation science. Now, related to our work, the question that we are trying to address is, do we need to make any adaptations when implementing the existing screening tools into practice? And really, do we need to explore simple and context-based screening tools and find ways to implement them? So now my postdoctoral project or my postdoctoral work is focused on attachment measurement innovations. Various attachment tools exist to evaluate attachment in children and adults, but the gold standard assessment tool to measure the parent-child attachment is called the Strange Situation Procedure, or SSP, which has been created to be administered in more like lab environment or the university affiliated environments by a team of skilled researchers. So I'm just gonna show you a video here again to put the things into context.
In 1969, American psychologist Mary Ainsworth gave developmental psychology a new procedure for studying attachment in infants. She called it the Strange Situation Classification, and it's widely referred to as simply the strange situation. As an adult, you know when you've formed an attachment with someone, you know how it feels, and you know how to express your feelings in words. However, when it comes to babies and young children, they haven't yet developed these skills, and therefore researchers must turn to more subtle techniques, such as the strange situation, which measures the security of an attachment in 1 to 2-year-olds. A 20-minute participatory observation, during which the researcher observes the infant's behavioral responses to a series of scenarios. Ainsworth's strange situation includes 8 stages, each lasting roughly 3 minutes. To start with, the mother, baby, and researcher are all together in the room, a small, neutrally colored space with some toys for the baby to play with. The experimenter leaves after around a minute, and the mother and baby are alone for approximately 3 minutes. In this stage, researchers are watching to see whether the child is confident to explore the new environment, or whether she stays close to the mother. A stranger joins the mother and baby in the room. The researchers record the baby's response to this unfamiliar newcomer, who is left alone with the baby when the mother leaves the room. At this stage, the researchers are observing the baby's behavior for signs of separation anxiety. 3 minutes later, the mother returns and the researchers observe for the baby's reunion response. The stranger leaves the room. A few minutes more, and the mother leaves the room too, leaving the baby alone for the first time in the experiment. The next person to enter the room is the stranger. And finally, after 3 minutes, the mother returns and the stranger leaves. All in all, a perfectly strange situation for all involved. So, what were the researchers measuring? When the mother was in the room with the baby, they scored the infant's behavior on 4 measures: proximity and contact seeking, contact maintaining, avoidance of proximity and contact, and resistance to contact and comforting. The baby's exploratory behaviors were also recorded as she explored the environment. Ainsworth reported that infants display 1 of 3 attachment types. Securely attached infants showed distress when separated from their mother, were avoidant of the stranger when alone, but friendly in the presence of their mother, and were happy when the mother returned from outside the room. 70% of children studied fell into this category. 15% of children demonstrated an ambivalent attachment with their mother. These children showed intense distress when the mother left the room and demonstrated a significant fear of the stranger. When the mother returned to the room, ambivalent children approached the mother but rejected contact. Ainsworth reported that a final 15% had an avoidant attachment style. Such infants show no interest when the mother leaves the room and play happily with the stranger. When the mother returns, avoidant children barely seem to notice. In 1990, Main and Solomon added that a very small percentage were inconsistent in their behaviours and defined this attachment style as disorganized. Ainsworth's caregiver sensitivity hypothesis suggests that differences in infants' attachment styles are dependent on the mother's behavior towards the baby during a critical period of development.
Okay, so this was just an overview of the strange situation procedure. So there are some challenges that we need to address here related to this gold standard. So we know this is great, and this is actually the the gold standard, but this procedure works really well in the lab or control setting, but is less suitable to be administered in community agencies. So while it would be optimal if community agencies could also use these tools, it is often considered too costly and requires more extensive training and time than community agencies can afford. This undermines their use and thus the quality of the evaluation to support evidence-based programming, as well as difficulty in connecting community evaluation with research undertaken in more controlled settings. To administer this measure, it requires 30 minutes with the caregiver and child, 3 trained staff members, and a specially set up observation room appointed with multiple video cameras and one-way mirror to video record the session. This is often too much for most community agencies, and thus a challenge to undertake community-based research. Also, coding requires a specially trained researcher, and it takes about 60 minutes to code one assessment, which makes it typically too complex for community use. This creates barriers to use in the evaluation of early interventions for high-risk families who could potentially benefit the most from such programs. Therefore, we need to develop a more efficient measure of parent-child attachment for widespread use in the community settings. So now Dr. Martha Hurt and I are developing and testing this new tool. We call this Attached Preschool Attachment Screening Tool, APSAST. And it is designed to be used with children between 18 months to 16 months of age to screen attachment behavior in at-risk children required to engage in the intervention. This new attachment tool is based on coding a 5-minute free play session in which a primary caregiver is asked to frustrate the child by removing the desired toy of interest from the child and that the child was currently playing with. So instead of activating the separation system, we are here introducing the frustration system just to activate that system. And we are using SSP measure, and that's strange situation procedure measure, and the MacArthur preschool attachment coding system or MAC coding system as a model to develop this new attachment screening tool. So now this new attachment tool is a screening tool. It is simple but useful as a window into preschool children's attachment patterns. It will improve the evidence-based programs and services, especially for high-risk families. Also, by using this tool, early interventions such as attach will be more effectively evaluated, scaled, and spread within agencies. And this will also aid policymakers to decide how public funds should be allocated for early childhood and adult-focused programs and evaluation. So now I will talk a little bit about the implications for clinical practice and policy. First and foremost, we need to increase the training of health professionals in trauma-informed practices so that healthcare providers can advocate for improved policy to support adults and children. By doing so, we can help prevent exposure to the adverse childhood experiences in families with young children, actually. And prevention strategies may include effective programs to stop child exposure to toxic stress, such as home visitation programs and delivery of evidence-based parenting programs, such as attached parenting program. So now I will talk a little bit about the implications for research. So as we have discussed, the consequences of adverse childhood experiences can be mitigated in families with support programs, for example, aimed at improving the parenting and building resiliency among the at-risk children. Future research should focus or should include developing and testing support programs, for example, to address parenting skills, training, and social support, and other support programs for children and adults exposed to trauma to prevent or treat traumatic stress symptoms, including cognitive behavioral therapy, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, and child parent psychotherapy. So now I will end my talk here with a famous quote from Nelson Mandela. It is also from Dr. Nicole Letourneau's book called Scientific Parenting. There can be no keener revelation of society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. So to paraphrase, the way we talk to children becomes their inner voice, and it is our responsibility, again, as healthcare providers, researchers, collaborators, and even funders, to understand the adverse childhood experiences and prevent them. So the take-home message from today's talk is that adverse childhood experiences and childhood trauma are treatable, and it is beatable. We can prevent it by breaking the cycle through improved parenting programs or early screening and by using simple tools. We have the power to buffer the effects of adverse childhood trauma for the children in our lives. I believe that we are in charge and we have the power.
A number is not always a number. A number is sometimes a clue. A trail of breadcrumbs through our childhood that can lead to an understanding of our lives today. A number is sometimes small, but it can leave large scars and cause deep hurt. A number is sometimes large and really scary, but it doesn't need to be. You can step past it or embrace it, or take it apart and put it back together again, however you see fit. A number can tell you where you have been and what has been done to you. It cannot tell you where you are going or where to take yourself. A number is a story, and where that story leads is up to you.
Okay, so yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you for your time, and if you have any question, I'm happy to answer them. And I really enjoyed. I hope you really enjoyed the presentation, and I really enjoyed giving this talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Lubna. That was absolutely wonderful, and I'm seeing applause from people in the audience. That's awesome. If you have, and the chat as well. Thank you very much. So if you have any questions, or if you can put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand, whichever you would prefer. And the hand is under the reactions button, just it'll pop you to the top of the list. Oh, Simone, go for it.
Thank you. I sound a little bit low because I have a cold, but I really enjoyed the process that we've reviewed childhood adverse experiences with such a positive output. And my only question is, does attachment with your children change after that 6 years? Can it change? If you have a 6-year attachment, does it ever change? Does any adversities change it? Can it be changed back? How is the impacts over a lifetime, I guess, of attachment with your kids? Because obviously they're with you for your whole life. So I'm just curious, has that been looked at or studied or so forth? So.
Yeah, so my supervisor right here, so they can help me, answer this question. But to the best of my understanding, the most of the changes that we can do in terms of attachment patterns is in the early 6 years, and after that, I mean, we can still, I believe that we can still do that, and there is some evidence-based research. But for in terms of like our studies, our sample, we have the children less than 6 years of age. But now we are in the process of including older children as well. So it's still early to say something, but again, we have in our sample, our children are less than 6 years of age. And we have seen the improvement in the attachment patterns, even though the intervention is only 10 weeks long.
Thank you. Yeah, I just was curious about that. Okay.
Yeah, Lubna, I was waiting for you to say that, because that's kind of big that we're seeing this intervention seems to be showing movement in that area. So that's really encouraging.
Right.
Jana.
Hi, Lubna. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. The question I have two questions actually. When you said it was very difficult for them to do that stranger assessment, is it just because they needed a set up room and they needed people watching in the window? Was it a time and kind of facility challenge? Was that the reason why that the stranger situation was not, it was just not seeming to be productive or helpful?
Okay, so I can definitely answer that question. Yeah, so strain situation procedure is a gold standard, and it is, we can administer it in a lab setting or in a university affiliated environment where, there is a specialized lab that have been created, especially to, just for this purpose, just to administer the strain situation procedure. But when we try to administer this measure in community agencies, we face real challenges. For example, we just had to ask the agencies to create this specialized room for this, right? Just because I think they just don't want any interaction of the child with any other person except the mother and the stranger. So that's why it has to be a separate room, and we need to put the cameras in, and also there's a requirement of one-way mirror, and so that the researchers that are outside the room, they can actually see what is going on in the room, right? And also because the child is left on their own, right, in some part of the this assessment. So they just wanted to make sure that the child is safe and everything is good. So that's why this measure is designed specifically for the we can do it in the lab, but when it comes to community agencies, it becomes really hard for some of the community agencies to develop such kind of room. And actually, when we were doing it at the Discovery House, they had the room already designed or developed for this purpose. And CUPS also, they have the room designed for especially for this purpose. When we went to some other places, actually at Discovery House too, we had to ask the CEO just to design this room, and Dr. Martha Hurd, she actually was in she actually communicated with them, and she helped them just design this room. So it was really hard to measure this measure in community agencies. So that is why we are just working on creating something simple.
Yes, and if you could you just speak to what is this? You called it a frustration. Was it a frustration experiment with the child? How exactly does that assess the child's attachment status? You said it was 5 minutes. Could you explain that?
Sure. So for the frustration task, what we ask the child to do is what we ask the mother or the caregiver to do is just to take the favorite toy away from the child, right? So actually we are activating the frustration kind of system in the child. So again, for a secure child, they are gonna acknowledge that they're gonna be a little bit unhappy with the mother, but then they're going to move on to something else. And then, when we give the toy back, we ask the mother to give the toy back to the child, then they will be happier, and they will just see this aspect as a reward, right? But for an unsecure child or insecure child, what's going to happen is either they will be avoidant, they will not acknowledge that the mother took the toy away, or either they will be really mad or upset with this situation because they really can't take it, right? Because they're like, why did you do this to me? And they will scream and cry. So yeah, so this is we are activating a different system through this. It's kind of a similar system, but a different aspect of coding the behavior of the mother and the child. So we can still go with the attachment behavior between the mother and the child, but the strange situation procedures, we are looking at the separation, like how the child handles separation from the mom. And here we are just looking at how the child is behaving when the favorite toy is taken away. And so we are trying to frustrate the child just to see that how the child handles that trauma and manages the behavior.
Okay, that was a really good explanation. Thank you. Yeah, I figured that's probably why it was just unable to provide the facilities to do that stranger attachment. But this, I understand now that they're using this as a very simple way, like the frustration, to see how the child responds to the mother and the situation. Oh, that was very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and it's only a 5 minutes free play.
Yes.
Yeah.
More time efficient, yes.
Yeah.
And I'll just add that, just so you know, that what we're really looking at is how they sort of repair the breach in the relationship, that when, you take this toy away, and like Lubna was saying, with a secure child, they'll be kind of like, hey, this, what are you doing? Like, we don't do this. You don't take my toy away. And then we see how things get repaired once the toy is given back. And that's the part that is really telling when it comes to the attachment patterns that we're looking at.
Oh, thank you, Martha. Yes, that's very helpful as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have a question in the chat. This is actually, Martha, you can jump in with this one as too. There's a question: are there opportunities to get involved as a research volunteer in the ATTACH initiative? So you're recruiting people to the study here.
Yeah. They're for students, and we often do this for like Kara has some students that we're working with right now. But for certain aspects of research, we can. And in relation to the ATTACH study, there may be some opportunities, but it depends, because we usually sort of tailor those opportunities to some of our colleagues, students, like Kara, she has students, so we'll kind of bump them up before just taking on volunteers. But it's always good to check, because we do sometimes need people, and so I don't want to discourage anyone from ever reaching out and asking, because things are fluid, right? They change all the time.
Mm-hmm. Martha, if someone was interested in getting more involved, potentially on the research side, is there someone they should be contacting, or is there like an attached email that they can contact for more information?
Yeah, they can contact me or Nicole, or if anyone wants more information on that, they can definitely contact me, and and I'm happy to always kind of reassess, where we're at. We always do different studies too. So, we sometimes have multiple studies running. So sometimes we, would welcome having some extra support, but again, we have to be careful, like, everything that we deal with is highly confidential. So it's not just so simple always, but yeah, definitely, if you are interested, you can reach out to me, and then at least I'll have your contact details and can contact you if something becomes available.
All right, I popped your email, I hope you don't mind, into the chat. So if you're interested, please copy that down. We have a couple more questions. We still have some time. So there's a question from Amy in the chat. Is there anything that exists currently that as a public health nurse we can do or say as we see mothers and infants and families in postpartum community public health? If early childhood trauma is known to the parent or is observed, like the presentation said, call child services, ? What is there that exists that could be used as a resource to support children and families?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Actually, this is a really good question. And this is what most of the physicians, even in Calgary, are working on. Like, when is a good time to screen the children and the families, right? And when they come to the clinic or to the nurses, or is it but when is a good time to screen them, right? And what are the tools that we can use? So we do have like ACEs questionnaire that we can administer. So I think from my understanding, the way I have understood this topic is just to keep an eye open. If you see anyone who you think like, okay, they are showing signs, then at least, have the ACEs questionnaire handy and then screen them. I mean, there will be lots of logistics and again, lots of maybe bylaws involved with that, but it's good to just screen those families early. And if we see any sign, then refer them to the particular agencies or, like health, like the mental health services or the social support or the community agencies, right? So that they can be, that we can start intervening early. And I think Kara would just agree with me. Like there is a lots of movement going on in Calgary, in the clinics and stuff. Like when it's a good time to do the screening, because should we just leave these families alone if they come to the clinic, or should we just refer them to the proper appropriate services so that they can be helped? So this is again, like there is no right answer to that, but I think if we, even in our coworkers or even in our friend circle, if we see the signs, and then I think it is our responsibility as again, like as a healthcare provider and professionals and researchers, that just to screen those families and refer them to the appropriate services.
Thanks, Lubna. And one more question, also in the chat from Alice Tran. Can anyone refer to the ATTACH program? And is the ATTACH intervention program run by a psychologist for most of the treatment, or what does the treatment program look like? And before you have a chance to respond, Nicole Letourneau is also going to be talking in June, I think, providing more information about the ATTACH program specifically. So if you want to learn more about the ATTACH program, register for the June one, but go ahead, Lubna, to answer that question now.
Yeah, so I think, Martha can speak to that because, she's the creator of this intervention. But again, from my understanding, like the program can be run who has an undergrad degree in health sciences. And so they don't have to be a psychologist to do this. I mean, it's good to it's good to have psychologists on board, but this program can be run by, who has some, and also like, social services, who have undergrad degrees in social services, nursing, or even psychology. So I think they're welcome to just, be trained in this program. But I think I will ask Martha to speak to that because she's the creator of the program.
Yeah, so the program itself, of course, was developed by doctors on the team, including myself and Dr. Letourneau, and actually Dr. Anis too was working on the project. But so Nicole and we designed the program so that although the theory is quite in depth and the reasons why it works, but actually administering the program is quite easy, which is what we wanted, because we wanted to have a larger impact. And you can't do that if you have to have someone that is a psychologist or a PhD administering the program. So we wanted to make this really easy to develop, well, not easy to develop, but easy to deliver program that nurses, social workers, people working in community agencies, people that have experience working with at-risk individuals could comfortably do the program. So the actual delivery of the program, to administer the program, is really simple. The theory behind it, which, we sort of tell our facilitators, don't get too mucked in with the theory. You don't need to know so much why it works, just that it does work, and administering it properly is the most important part of the ATTACH program. And doing it this way, developing it this way, we will be able to have such bigger reach. And I'm happy to tell you too that we're also developing an online platform as well for our ATTACH facilitators. So that will even increase the reach even further. So we're just in the throes. That's another study that we're working on. So, but I hope that answers your question. So no, you don't have to be a psychologist. Of course, if you are, that's even better, but it's designed so that you know, you have to definitely have some kind of background in nursing, social work, psychology, something like that, working in community agencies, but you don't have to have, you know, a master's or a PhD, or, you know, be a specialist in you know, psychoanalysis or anything like that. So.
Thanks, Martha. And I know we're right at 1 o'clock, so if you have to jump off, please do. But we have one more question, and then I'm going to have to, unfortunately, cut everyone off. But like I said, we're going to be doing another talk on ATTACH specifically in June. So please take a look, keep an eye out for our invites and keep an eye out for that. And you can ask your questions there too. So the last question then, in regards to the ATTACH program being done in the community, are there ways in which this intervention is being administered in a culturally sensitive way? Parenting styles can be different based on cultural context of families, where some practices that might be seen as ACEs could be seen as normal within a certain culture.
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. So we're happy to report that we do have families from different cultures in the sample. So yeah, so still this intervention works. So then we do have, like, you know, families from like diverse cultures. And so our sample was, I mean, it's heterogeneous, not like homogeneous. So yeah, we can like proudly say that this intervention even works for them, because, and we have adapted it according to different cultures too. Like, for example, like we do, there are 3 components to this intervention, right? So then we do the play session and the feedback session, and we do the hypothetical exercises. And also we do the real life situations. So even for the hypothetical exercises, we have adapted it according to different cultures. So we can use different names based on the culture, so that it's more culturally appropriate or adaptive. And also, like, you know, this intervention is designed actually based on the feedback from the participants, from the collaborators, from the community agencies. And so we tried our best. I mean, when I say we, it means Dr. Martha Hart and Dr. Nicola Letourneau, of course, right? Because they are the co-creators. So yeah, they just kept these aspects into mind. And yeah, so we can, and again, like when you say that ACEs could be seen as normal within the culture, I can totally understand that part for sure. But still, if we, in our sample, we had the scores of ACEs of 4+, right? So then we still consider the sample as high risk sample. And yeah, and this intervention really works for I mean, people from different cultural backgrounds as well. But again, I would like to talk to Martha. I mean, Martha, if you would like to add something here.
Yeah, so no, I thought you answered that really well. Luckily for us, the program really transfers over to other cultures. We didn't really have to do too much tailoring, because the emphasis is really on the parent, the caregiver. They kind of lead in the intervention. And so the only thing that we really were even able to adapt to make it sort of more culturally appropriate was, like Lubna mentioned, our hypothetical situations. We can change the names, but the situations are very general, and it's they're all kind of like what any culture would sort of deal with. So they're very basic, basically. And so it's that, in that sense, it's really good. We don't have to be overly sensitive to any culture, because it kind of works right across the board.
Thank you. And I'm so sorry, Angela, but I really do need to, Angela has a great question, but we're going to be contacting you about this directly. Angela is asking how this can be applied in First Nation communities with community nursing stations. I think that's a brilliant question, and Martha and Elizabeth and I, we're going to have to follow up with you on that one.
And Angela, it can be, and we've had lots of First Nations people in our studies already, and they've done really well in the studies. So yeah, absolutely. And in fact, maybe at our next meeting, bring that up, because you know, we actually would like to find a few more community agencies to help us roll out our attachment, or our ATTACH online app when that study is wraps up, and then we get to the sort of like pilot testing stage of that. So yeah, so bring that up in our May meeting, would you? That would be really helpful, because we would love to you know, really engage that community as well.
Or email us, because I just saw that Angela said that she's going to be working at a nursing station this spring, summer. So email us ahead of the meeting if that's helpful too. But I'm going to call it a wrap. Thank you everyone for all these awesome questions. Yes, applause all the way around. Thank you, Lubna. That was a wonderful talk. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you again. So we are going to have a attach webinar in April. You'll be seeing more about that in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be Lubna again. I think you're speaking again. You're doing 2 in a row with Nicole Letourneau and Kendra Nixon, and they're going to be talking about qualitative research and specifically the use of MPT got that right, MPT in qualitative research. So please keep an eye for that and sign up for next April. If you have a chance, please fill out our little survey that's in the chat box as well. We'd love to get your feedback, and I will let you all hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Thanks again.
Thank you again. Take care.